Hi, my name is Stephen Bleicher. Welcome to my exhibition, The Kings Highway at the Burroughs and Chapin Myrtle Beach Art Museum. It will be up through about mid-April, so I hope you can come by. The work starts out at South Florida and follows the routes that the Spanish and the Native Americans used, going up through Georgia, and then the colonists, till it actually ends in Boston. In fact, shortly after Washington was sworn in as president, he came and visited the southern states and came down Kings Highway through North Carolina, through our area in South Carolina and Myrtle Beach, all the way down to Georgia. So it's had a long, storied history. My connection with it started when I was living in Fort Lauderdale, and I was interested in A1A, which is the coastal highway there, also sometimes known as the Dixie Highway. And as we moved up here, I moved up here in 2005 with my wife. I was chair of the art department back then at Coastal, and began to look at Route 17 and started to see the connections between all of these coastal highways. And highways are something that I've been very involved in my own work. Before that, I've worked on a continuing series called Route 66, tracing Route 66 from Chicago all the way out to Santa Monica.
Amazing.
So these pieces are part of the initial part of the work, and they date back, these are more new pieces from the real southern end of it to about 2014, and then most of the rest of the work in the exhibition was done over the last year in 2017, so it's been a very busy year.
And what amazes me is that when you're far away from the work, it looks like a photograph, and you don't really tell that it's a sketch until you get fairly close to it.
And all the maps are digital transfers. At one point when I was doing Route 66, I tried to draw out the maps and I realized that was just taking way too much time. So some of the images I composite and do a lot of photography on site, and then do some of the direct transfer on some of them, so that I'm really involved in the idea of value and the areas of light and dark, and bringing out those values to show the form. This part of the exhibition comes from about Mount Pleasant through the Marion Forest, and I was always very involved or interested in all of the sweetgrass sowers and their little stands going through the forest and into Charleston. So this is one of the abandoned sweetgrass stands, and the knife, the old rusted out knife I found on the grounds there.
Huh. This piece that's the highlight of the exhibit is just phenomenal with the amount of detail that you have in it. How long did it take you to make it?
Quite a while. I really don't keep track of time on a lot of these. So again, very involved in the sweetgrass. My wife and I actually took a class from Veronica Gerald Davis through her store. So learning exactly what goes into the craft and the art form is really important. You really begin to appreciate it more when you realize just how much labor and thought process goes into creating something so beautiful. And then the radial format of the design is just stupendous. And radial design is something I teach my students at Coastal. The images that you're looking at now are moving more toward Georgetown and Hobcaw Barony. It's the slave cabins at Hobcaw. And it's just interesting to note how people were forced to live and take a look at some of the different aspects of life back then and appreciate just what people had to go through to survive. The Shark is just outside of Georgetown going south on 17, and it's one of those things that we always pass as we're going into Charleston, and I've always been enamored with the Shark. I really wish I had taken pictures of it and done some sketches. I really wish I had rung the person's doorbell and asked them how they came about having it on their front lawn. Maybe one day soon I'll actually do that. I'll stop in, ring their doorbell, and see what the story is behind it. It's made out of wood and tin, and it's just a great little piece of the road and the highway. And that's one of the reasons I've always been interested in roads and highways, is there's so many stories and so many fascinating things along the way. The country store at that point was still open when I took some of the pictures and sketches. It's now closed. The last time I drove down there, it was all boarded up and closed. But at that point, it was still a going concern, and it had all of these great penny candies and odd little sodas and snacks, and it was just a real treasure in terms of being one of those very stereotypical small general stores. This is an old motel on 17 around Pauley's Litchfield, and my wife kept asking me to go out and work on it. Helene was afraid that at one point, if I didn't, they'd knock it all down. So I finally did drive out there, and there were big no trespassing signs, but I trespassed anyway, figuring that if the police stopped me, I could show them my card that I was a professor at Coastal, and they wouldn't arrest me. They'd just tell me not to do it again. The second time I went out there, there was now a sign on the door, or on the big gates, that still said no trespassing, but had a real estate agent's name. So I called him and asked him what he knew about the place, and it turns out it was something called the Magnolia Beach Club, and that the beach by it, which is Mackenzie Beach, was an African American only. It was a segregated beach. And during the 30s and 40s and early 50s, they brought in all top name African American entertainment. And it was a really going concern. And I think from what I've been able to piece together, that Hurricane Hazel was what finally did it in. But it's just a wonderful place. When I was talking to the real estate agent, and he was like, so you went into the cabins? And I said, well, I didn't go in the cabins, but I was all over the grounds, and I know I was trespassing. And he went, well, what about the snakes? And I said, what do you mean snakes? And he went, oh, the place is full of rattlesnakes. And I was glad that I was always careful about where I walked. I picked that up from my Route 66 days. But I didn't see any rattlesnakes, but lots of remnants of different animals that had once found it as a home and a haven for a while there. But it's a great concern. It would be really nice if somebody took it and restored it back to its prominence. And the piece above that is actually now starting to move out toward Wilmington and Vereen Gardens, and there are all of these old oyster shells that are there. And so some of the maps, Ben Burrows from Coastal Carolina University, who's the Horry County historian, gave me some of the maps and was really very helpful in telling me all about the beginnings of the Kings Highway. And even Walter Hill from the Horry County Museum was also very beneficial in helping me get the tobacco and the cotton in one of the pieces, and again helping me out with some of the history of our area and the road itself. This is the ubiquitous Gabe dolphin. We've all been in it any number of times, and every tourist that we bring who comes to visit us, we bring them through the Gay Dolphin, and it's just a vast place. You can get lost in there. I usually get lost trying to leave going out the wrong exit. But it really is a Myrtle Beach landmark in terms of our area as a coastal and beach haven. The last two pieces in the exhibition are just over the border between where we are and Wilmington. It's actually around Bolivia, North Carolina, and we actually have a Buddhist temple in our area. And so the last two images are where this exhibition ends as part two, or as part one of what will be a two-part series, and the next part will be the rest of North Carolina up through to Boston.
There's an opening tomorrow night, Thursday night.
Thursday night from 5 to 7 here at the museum.
Okay, great.
And I'll be doing a number of talks, both a couple of afternoons and a couple, maybe a Saturday or so that if you want to come in and find out a little bit more and hear some of the stories, I'd be happy to see you and talk with you about it all.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.